So thanks again for coming today. We're here to talk about a new call under Building Positive Relations within the Peace 4 project, entitled Building Community Cohesion Through Social Enterprise. And this is a pilot call that SCUPB are launching this time, which will help us to potentially inform future programme delivery under the Peace Plus programme. So there is a Peace Plus programme that's been written into the regulation, which is yet to be approved by the European Parliament, but it's going through that process, the latter stages. And it's also built into the withdrawal agreement, the agreement between the EU27 and the UK government. There are indicative values that have been placed upon that programme by both the Irish government and the UK government. So what we're starting to do after the summer period, upon approval by both of our sponsor departments, is start to design that programme and what it potentially may look like. And that's the rationale for this call today, which we'll go through in more detail. It's trying to build capacity, if you like, potentially within communities, so that if future funding does become available, either through programme activity or government funding, then those communities who can benefit from this type of activity will have enough capacity to understand how they can bid in for those proposals. So, a little bit about the agenda. I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes and then I'll be off. And then I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Paul Boylan here from the Joint Secretariat, who will take you through the application and the appraisal process if you do decide to submit an application. We will also have Alistair Mackenzie here, who's our financial controller, who will take you through the very appetising piece of the content on finances and submissions, what you can and can't do. We then do have our two representatives from the accountable departments in the north and the south. We have Lindsay and Rosie, who will give you a little piece on the policy perspective from the accountable department side, which you should find useful if you do decide to submit an application. And then after that, we'll see how you guys feel it's going. We may have a networking session. We might have a bit of a collaboration session if you think that's useful, where you can come together with like-minded people and see if there's any synergies between different organisations about submitting a bid together. And if there's anything else that falls out of the meeting, we will deal with that through the questions that you submit in Slido and take those forward afterwards. So, look, just a little bit about me to give you a bit of an overview of who we are and what we do. We are the Special EU Programmes Body, and we have a remit to deliver both the Peace 4 and the Interreg 5A programmes in Northern Ireland and the eligible counties in Ireland itself. We're a public body created as a result of the Good Friday Agreement, which, for those of you who were here earlier today, will understand it's 21 years old today. And we have sponsored departments who really guide and support us in the delivery of these programmes in both member states. We have the Department of Finance in the north, and in the south, we have the Department for Public Expenditure and Reform. And those two departments work closely with us to ensure that we deliver both of those programmes as efficiently and effectively as possible. We also promote under a national contact point for both for transnational programmes, so for Interreg 5B and 5C programmes that some of you may be involved in. So we work closely with the managing authorities across Europe in the delivery and implementation of those programmes as well. And we're located across three main sites. We have Belfast, which is the HQ, we have Omagh, and we also have a site in Monaghan also. Just a little bit about the context. We are currently in the 2014 to 2020 programming period. These programmes will close officially in 2023, but the new Peace Plus programme will be operational, all things being equal, from 2021 to 2027. So there's a little bit of overlap there for us. We will have a new programming period in operation, while we'll be hopefully closing off a lot of the interventions that are currently underway in the existing peace programme. It's very heavily results oriented in that we do expect to see clear outputs, deliverables and milestones. And it's much more focused and concentrated this time, in that with the first two peace programmes, we had about 21,500 projects between both of them, Peace 1 and Peace 2. Peace 3, we had about 350, 360. This time with Peace 4, we're sat currently at about 95 different projects. So the money's much more concentrated into strategic objectives, which were agreed following a period of consultations in the eligible area over a period of time before the current programme period started, and of course agreed with the accountable departments, the member states and the European Commission. We do aim to reduce the administrative burden as much as possible, and we understand that there is a certain amount of administration that's involved with the projects. But if you look through the cycle of the programmes from Peace 1 and Peace 2 to where we are now, there is an awful lot of simplification, and sometimes administrative burden lies at a national level rather than at the European level. But look, Alistair will talk a little bit more when it comes to the financials and how we are reducing the administrative burden with regards to things like simplified cost options, which makes it much easier for projects to submit claims. And look, the final point there, not to put a bit of a dampener on it, but the projects do come with strings attached. We do expect deliverables to be met and outputs to be hit, because if they aren't, then there's a clawback facility within the letter of offer that may be offered. So a little bit about the programming period as it exists at the moment. The eligible area is Northern Ireland and the border region of Ireland, and that's the eligible area there. So you can see it's the 6 counties in the north, and it's also the adjacent counties, and Sligo must be touching somewhere down the line there, but Sligo's included as well. So that is the eligible area for our programming period, within this programming period, if you like. The ERDF is 229 million, and that is co-financed by both of the member states, matched by 15% contribution. So there isn't a requirement to bring your own funding to the projects or to any proposals that you do submit through to SEUPB. 20% of the budget can be spent outside of the eligible area, as long as the output from that there directly impacts upon the eligible area. So you can spend money outside the area, but there has to be a link back in to the eligible area, and that has to be clearly demonstrated in any application. Single jurisdiction projects do work within peace, not in Interreg, but in peace, provided that they contribute to the programme results and the outputs. That's what it looks like at a graphical level. We've got one priority axis, if you like, which is building peace and reconciliation through economic and social activity in the eligible area. That sits above everything. And then below that, we've got 4 strategic objectives. We've got one for shared education. We have a couple of projects running there. We have got one for children and young people. And we have about 12 projects running at a regional level there. And then we've got our 17 local authorities delivering projects there also. And that's Action 2.2. We have Strategic Objective 3, which is shared spaces and services. We have our work there with the local authorities again, doing local shared spaces and services, bringing people together into areas where they normally wouldn't be, but where they feel safe and can contribute to a peaceful society. We also have 9 regional projects which have been approved by steering committee, which are big capital bills up to the value of 57 million, which are now underway. And then we have our work with the victim and survivor services as well, doing lots of project and advocacy work out there along the eligible area. But we're here today because of Strategic Objective 4, which is building positive relations. And it's really 4.2. It's building positive relations at a regional level. just so you see where we're at. And of course, one of the balancing acts that we have is that we want to maximise the amount of receipts that we can to the Commission, but we're under very strict instructions from our good friends in finance and public expenditure reform in the South not to spend any more than 100%. So there's a fine balancing act there in order to maximise those receipts back to the Commission. Shared education, we're slightly under at the moment, but the Lurgus and the EA have another proposal in to do some additional work there. We're overcommitted in children and young people, but we anticipate some slippage there, so we think that's a safe bet. That'll probably work its way back down towards 100%. Shared spaces and capital development, we're overcommitted there as well. We wanted 7 bids to come through. We had a target to the Commission for 7 new builds. We've got 9 good ones that we think at the moment. That might fall back to 8, but we're still overcommitted there, but we're comfortable with that. Victim and survivors, we're at about 89% committed there. Again, there's another additional bid in from victim and survivors to do some more work there. So we're currently reviewing that. And that brings us down to building positive relations at a regional level. We're about 81% funded there. So we had a call this morning under building emotional resilience, where we have allocated about €6.4 million for a project to come forward there. And then this is the final call at the moment, I think. This may well be the final call under PEACE for this programming period, for another call under building positive relations under community cohesion, a pilot program, if you like, to inform future delivery. And then you look down there, we've got a lot of local authority partnership work there. They transcend across the 3 strategic objectives: children and young people, shared spaces, and building positive relations. And we have invested about €80 million with our 17 local authorities to deliver against a certain number of interventions across those 3 themes. For those of you topping those up, I think we're 94. There is one more project there, which is called technical assistance, and that's the money that SEUPB use in order to manage the delivery of the programs over the programming period, and that's about 6% of the eligible funds currently. So this is what we're doing. We currently have 19 live projects, and we aim to promote positive relations at a regional level, celebrating culture and diversity. And we mentioned earlier about the intervention logic this time and how we're very output focused. So what we ask the projects to do is to define, what we say is we're going to deliver a certain amount of outputs, and within those outputs there'll be milestones and there'll be indicators and targets. And then those outputs are assessed or evaluated at a thematic level to check the journey travelled within the eligible area, if you like. So within building positive relations, we have got an aim of delivering 20 projects. So we hope to have 21 delivered by the end of the programming period. We're currently at 19, plus the 2 that we have launched today. And we aim to get 20 projects that deliver meaningful, purposeful, and sustained contact between persons from different communities. That's the key to these projects, if you like. And then the result indicators that fall off the back of that are taken from various national surveys that happen both in the north and the south. And what we want to do at the end of that period is to check if the interventions that we deliver contribute to wider societal targets and aims. And we hope that the projects that we fund will help promote positive relationships between Protestants and Catholics, and also minority ethnic communities across the eligible area, the 6 counties in Northern Ireland and the 7 in Ireland itself. So that's basically it from me. What I'll do now is I'll pass you over to Paul. But before I do, can we see the Slido, guys? Have we had any luck with it? Not quite yet. Sorry, we're using all the bandwidth to live stream today's event, so you can access this recording today afterwards if you do wish to do so. We'll try and get the Slido up and running again. Once it is up and running, we'll let you know. And if there's any questions you want to ask us, please just do submit them through. Or at the end, we will give you an opportunity to do it the old-fashioned way and raise your hand and ask any questions that you may have. So, look, what I'll do now is I'll pass you over to my colleague Paul, who will talk through the application appraisal and the project management piece that you will need to understand if you do decide to submit an application through for this particular theme. I'll pass you over to Paul.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Boylan. I work for the Joint Secretariat within the Special European Union's Programmes body. I'm very conscious of how lovely a day it is out there, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet. The slides will be there as a permanent record, and you will have the opportunity to review them. I would encourage you to ask questions either at the end or through Slido, even those who are joining us via the live webcast to do so also. I'm going to give you a little bit of the key points on the call, and then I'll take you through SUPB's assessment process, and then I'll take you through how you submit your application on the electronic management system. And then I'll hand over to my colleague Alistair, who'll chat you through some of the budgets, and then our colleagues from the policy departments will give some input then. Okay, as Mark said, it's 21 years since the Good Friday Agreement, and this call has come about as a result of the development in both social enterprise and the peace building sphere. We're very conscious that we have a Peace Plus programme coming down the line, and Mark's outlined that. And we're hopeful that we can merge peace building and social enterprise together and have some very good outcomes as a result of this pilot. And those outcomes might germinate into full-blown project proposals for future programmes. Maybe not even necessarily the peace programme, but it could be other programmes. So we're very conscious that that's what we're trying to achieve, and we're conscious that merging peace building and social enterprise, although it may happen naturally, we've not tried to formalise that yet. So this is our opportunity to do so and to deliver out. So what are we looking for? We're seeking one project. So this is one pilot project that will impact on the entire region. So that's all of Northern Ireland, and in this case, all of the border counties of Ireland. We anticipate some sort of consortium to have reach into the communities which we're targeting, and I'll come on to those in a little bit. And we expect some sort of capacity to present this information, because you'll see that the outputs are very much about the presentation of the data sets and about how you reach into communities, build the capacity, get the toolkits, have the evidence, and then able to present that for future use. So in terms of the regional significance, we are seeking a project that must target at least 2 of the 5 urban villages plus 1 target area in the border region of Ireland. And we'll outline further in detail what the 5 urban villages are. And you'll notice the call sort of focus on, potentially a Belfast urban village and the Londonderry urban village. It's not limited to these areas, but we would expect them to be in as a minimum. Project costs, we have circa around €1 million. We expect most of it to be revenue costs. We don't expect to be, buying buildings and things like that, because this is very much about bringing the theory to life for us around merging the 2 key areas. The projects should be submitted in euro using an exchange rate of £1 to 1.18 euros, and the project we're anticipating will be delivered over a 2-year period. So what is it we're trying to get for the €1 million? We're looking for one pilot pathway outreach programme, which includes some sort of toolkit developed and implemented with meaningful, purposeful and sustained contact between people from different communities. And again, this is about bringing the peace building in. We see the theory of change here as about the contact with communities and the contact that that's going to have. We expect to see a lessons learned report documenting the key learning and experiences from the pilot programme, and we also expect a pilot website which has the details of the projects and some of the activities that are funded through the project as a bit of a pathway aid for dissemination across other parts of the region. So they're the three key things that we expect to see in any bid. Just at a high level, what's in and what's out. SEUPV will fund an evaluation, so we don't expect the project to fund that evaluation. SEUPV will help in the assembly of a consultative advisory panel to assist the project. That consultative advisory panel will be serviced by the project itself, so we would expect the project proposal to factor that in, that they will have to provide papers to the consultative advisory panel for consideration and advice. We don't see this as a capital grant scheme, but it may include small capital elements. You are the expert in both social enterprise and peace building, and we expect the project to tell us what they think is right for the region in terms of the proposed solution to get the outputs that we're trying to deliver here. I'm going to go into a key element of the call document now. So section 7 of the call document sets out a number of features, and these features must be included. I'm just going to bring those up. So it's section 7 within your call document, and it sets out the mandatory fields that must be included. So at point 3, it talks about the development of a pilot project of activity across the region. These are the mandatory elements. So you must refer to that when you're developing your bid, because this is what we're going to be checking it against to ensure that it's delivering. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention. There's quite a bit of background in the call, and there's a lot of detail, but if you're going to remember anything, section 7.3 must include a number of key features. Okay, so I'm going to go on to talk about how we select projects. We assess projects against 7 criteria, and you'll note the weighting. We have a reduction in governance in terms of it's down to 10%, and we have sustainable development and equality. So SEUPV, maybe just a show of hands, has everyone here had engagement with SEUPV or applied to SEUPV? Yeah, most people. So you have the experience of our robust process, shall we say. Okay, the selection criteria, I'm just going to talk them through one by one. The first selection criteria is about the contribution towards the results and outputs of the programme. Mark talked about the results and outputs, obviously the attitudinal change. But we would ask that you refer to the output indicator guidance. The output indicator guidance gives great detail under building positive relations what is achievement. In particular, it gives detail around the cross-community splits. This is a 60-40 split in the level of engagement which you're conducting, and then a 80-20 split as a minimum in the border region. So you need to be mindful of that when you're developing your project, because we expect that the engagement will have a community split in order to meet the requirements of the output indicator guidance. Again, it's about sustained, meaningful and purposeful contact between people from groups and different backgrounds. We would expect to see you articulate that in your bid, and it will be this selection criteria that we lead with and that we'll be focusing on. So just to carry on that selection criteria, it's about being regional and characteristic. We appreciate that you might only have as a minimum 2 of the urban villages and 1 of the border regions, but we would expect you to, particularly through the likes of the website and the dissemination, to engage across the entire region to gather your data sets. So bear that in mind when you're developing your bids. Again, strategic issues and policy issues of importance. So My colleagues from the accountable departments will discuss that with you shortly, what the key issues around the policy is for them and how they want to see it go forward. What does a good project design look like? We'll be assessing it against whether or not it demonstrates a link between the proposed activities and the impact of your project. So is what you're doing going to give you the outputs that you're looking to achieve? And you need to spell that out in clear detail and evidence that to us. Inclusion in marginalised groups. You can present to us why you feel your groups that you're engaging with are marginalised. There's obviously a number of key indicators out there, deprivation index and things like that, but it's up to you to present that to us, how you're engaging with the marginalised groups. The quality of the project team and implementation arrangements. We need to understand why your team has been made up the way it has. We need to understand why you feel it's got the right mix of skills and experience, and we need to take assurance that you can deliver peace building activities. So any previous details around experience and stuff, and I'll come on to that in a bit when I talk about the application form, which is available on our electronic management system. Okay, value for money is the fourth criteria which we assess, and under this criteria we'll be looking for details of the budget and the rationale under each of the budget headings, and Alistair will outline that in detail in a moment. The quality of the cross-community and cross-border cooperation is the next one. So we're trying to understand the added value. This is, as far as we can understand, the first time we certainly have funded activity which is spanning both enterprise and peace building. So we really need to understand where's the added value here in the community, and we would expect you to draw that out to us and spell it out in your application, and how you're going to demonstrate and ensure participation from all communities. Again, reflect on the output indicator guidance. Do we have the community split right here? Is it going to give us what we're hoping to achieve? Okay, the two selection criteria at the end are sustainable development and equality, and we've got quite a lot of details on our website about what that's actually included within those, and I'm not going to go into them in great detail just now, but essentially you need to outline why your project's been designed to meet and contribute towards both sustainable development and equality. There will be further workshops where we'll be able to get into a little bit more detail around these topics, and I'm conscious that I've thrown a lot of information at you today, and hopefully just registering the nature of the task, but also helping you decide if you're a fit for this or not. And if you are, you will have obviously the opportunity to re-engage with this. Once we've got all 7 sections completed, that comes into us. We'll probably seek some points of clarity, and then we will score your application. So we score the application against each of the criteria between a score of 0 and 5. You must score no less than 3 to be considered for funding, which means you need a minimum score of 60% to be considered for funding. It might be that you're above the threshold of the 60%, but there might be another project that's higher than yours. So bear that in mind as well. It's not just a case you need to score the minimum, you need to be really looking for high marks, particularly if it is a competitive call. Again, we can only fund one project under this. Okay, so that's our selection criteria. We'll now move on to the electronic management system. Just a show of hands, who's engaged with our electronic management system? Quite a few, so it's about maybe 50%. SUPB have an electronic management system which we share with, I think, 27 other cross-border programs throughout Europe. In order to register your application and submit it, you have to go on and complete a login, which is very straightforward. Just put in name and passwords and so forth. You'll be allocated them if you're registering first time. And then you need to go through in each of the sections, which I'll now take you through. But on our website, we have a user's guide, and we also have a ticketing system. So if you have any issues with the electronic management system, you you could raise the issue through the ticketing system, and someone will come back to you and will be able to resolve that for you and hopefully move the issue on. Okay. So section 1 of the electronic management system is the executive summary, and we're looking for you to set out the challenge which you're looking to address and some of the anticipated change which you're looking to create. You need to think about this. It is character limited, particularly in relation to the executive summary of your project, and you need to think about the readership. It's not only SEUPB that are reading this. If your project is successful, it would be a wider audience of the public, because this then becomes the official executive summary of your project on our website. So that has to go in there, and it's the lead partner that populates this. Section 2 is the partnership overview. So this is where you will add all the partners in with their budgets, which you would have to agree obviously in advance of putting them on the electronic management system, and you would need to state which lead partner organisation was doing which deliverables. The electronic management system follows a structure, a project management structure, that you have activities which give you deliverables, which then give you the output. So the output, if we take an example of Peace for Youth, which is our young people, the output is a young person engaged in the programme. But you might have a deliverable of recruit the young person. The next deliverable is engage the young person in good relations, citizenship, personal development, which then give you the output. So you should set that structure out and think about that before you start to go into the electronic management system and set out your project. It goes activity, deliverables, outputs. So we would expect you to populate all of that there within the partnership overview. You should then set out your project design, and we would expect you to have SMART objectives for your project, and you would detail them in this section. We would expect you to have indicative targets of the community background which you're looking to engage with. So, you might want to look at some of the demographic index around the community backgrounds in the areas in which you're engaging. And that might be a starting point for the number of people you wish to engage with. You should outline the activities, why, when, where, who, should all be detailed in there. These will be the questions that we'll be asking ourselves when we're reading these sections, deciding whether to fund the proposal or not. You will also be looking at the quality of the cross-community and cross-border cooperation within the design of your project. And that's right up to the project partners themselves. Do you have the right mix of PUL and CNR in there? And are you likely to engage with participants, i.e. communities, in a sort of reasonable split? And you remember we're looking at 60-40 or 80-20 in the border region. Okay, strategic policy issues and context. My colleagues will talk about the policy issues and context within Ireland and Northern Ireland shortly. The issue there is you need to address those and you need to fit with those, and you need to outline in the sections 4, 5 and 6 why you do so. You also need to outline with how your project is additional. We know that there's lots of activity taking place in small pockets around social enterprise, but what we need to see you demonstrate is why the peace and reconciliation and social enterprise, i.e. the social cohesion through social enterprise, is right for your areas, and you need to demonstrate that to us when you're putting forward your application. So that's around the additionality of your project. Similarly, we don't want to displace any activity. If there's activity already taking place and you know that it's good activity, we would like you to identify that, but there's potentially options where you could bring a peace and reconciliation slant to some of the activities that are currently taking place, and look at it through the prism of peace and reconciliation. So although we have displacement there might be activity but might not be at the level or the angle which you want to come at it from. So you also need to set out the need and demand for your project. That's mainly around why does this community need this activity now? I.e., the end goal is to have a centre, and we are at a very early stage, so we need to build the capacity within the community in order to get there. So that's the sort of thing that you need to evidence that X amount of people have showed an interest in doing Y, and we want to help them on the journey through this process. You're the experts, you've done it a million times, you know the best ways to do it. Present that to us and then we'll consider it. We would also like you to set out there some of the options which you considered. That's for our own purposes, to understand why it is you're doing it in a certain way. And again, the do nothing option is always there as part of the options criteria that you could look at. Okay, section 7 of the electronic management system is where you should be referring to the outputs of the project and how you're going to contribute towards them and what you see those actually being in practice, so detailing some of that for us. Section 8 is the management arrangements. We would expect you to set out a clear structure with some sort of organogram demonstrating clearly, what all the tasks of all the individuals involved are in terms of administrative, financial, operational. And we would also like to know the organisations involved and why they're involved. And we would like to see some details around whether or not you've delivered EU funding in the past. That's always helpful for us. Okay, the monitoring and evaluation plan. We expect you to monitor your activity throughout. However, as I mentioned earlier, SUBB will be conducting the evaluation around this. So we're expecting you to, in your bid, offer up some ideas as to what you would like to see the evaluation reviewing in terms of the data sets which you might be presenting as a project. And again, the horizontal themes of sustainable development and equality, the ones that we are assessing, you get the opportunity in section 10 to address these. And again, it's around the key considerations. Have you considered things like the environment, the economic and social issues in relation to your project? And there's toolkits online, and there's further training around equality, which we have on our website, which you could stream from our YouTube channel. Just about there, section 11 is the exit strategy, and we would expect you to understand that, the activity you're going to walk away from, but you would expect the communities, and we would expect you to have an idea of how the communities are going to take that forward, or even outline that. And we appreciate we're limited in the scope, that it's only €1 million, but you would have the opportunity to take forward activity, and we would like to see that outlined. So when you get to EMS, you've done your 11 sections, you'll be asked to build your project on the electronic management system, setting out under the 3 work packages, under the management, implementation and communications plans, what you're actually going to do. So the first of those is the management. This is mandatory. You need to tell us how you're going to run your project, and we'd expect you to put deliverables in there like project steering group meeting 6 times over the lifetime of the project. So you're going to do that by 2022, for instance, would be a date. And every time you were updating that, if you were successful, you'd say, I've done 3 of the 6, done 4 of the 6, and so forth. We would expect you in there to demonstrate the critical pathways, because there will be points where, the limitation of funds, the time available, you can only take projects so far and communities so far. So we would expect a critical pathway there as to whether or not the likelihood of activity is going to happen, and whether you need to pivot and do something else if it doesn't happen. So like in most projects, you would have an opportunity to review that as you were told. Okay, the communications work package. We would expect you to think about who your internal and external customers are and how you're going to communicate to them in practice when the project's up and running. There's some mandatory minimum requirements in terms of like e-zine and Twitter and have a web page and things like that. They're all detailed on the toolkit. which is available on our website, and we'll be making the slides available after the event today. And then we have the implementation. So how are you actually going to deliver the project? How are you going to manage it? How are you going to communicate it? How are you going to deliver it? So we expect you to detail, you could have maybe 3 or 4 work packages under implementation as to how you're actually going to deliver it. That's entirely up to you what the solution to this issue is. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Alistair to take you through the budget sections, and we'll be able to take questions later.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alistair McKenzie. I'm the Financial Controller at the SUPB. Been in this post for about just over 7 years now. Previously, had the pleasure of looking after the budgets for the 2 programmes. Had a lot of liaison with Cont departments. It was a pleasure. My job today is to take you through the budgetary requirements of the application process. For those of you who are not familiar, some of you have been through this process, and I do appreciate that. Before I go into that though, our primary role looking forward would be to, my unit's primary role looking forward would be to verify the expenditure claims from projects. And with that in mind, it's a useful introduction to projects that we are actually required to assess the value for money criterion within the project applications. So we've got a bit of a start when it comes to we understand how the project operates and all the rest of it. Anyway, so moving on to the budget section on the EMS system. Your project application should be denominated in euro, and for any expenditure that originates in sterling, please use the planning rate of €1.18 to the pound before you upload that into EMS, okay? The budgets are input at work package level, by partner, by period. Now your project is expected to last for 24 months, so therefore you should be splitting each of your budget headings against each work package by partner, by period, over the full 24 months of the project, okay? We don't expect items like external expertise and services just to be, I suppose, straight lined over the period. You need to see when you're actually going to be expect to be incurring expenditure. When you upload it, that will be the first forecast that we'll receive from you. So we're going to be using that for booking cash until we start getting proper forecasts from you. So it's quite important that you make an accurate estimate of when you expect the expenditure to be incurred. As Paul mentioned, there's 3 work packages: management, implementation and communications. I'm going to move on to staff costs in a minute, but one point to note would be that if you've got a member of the team who's predominantly working on the management side, say 90-95% of the time on the management side and only 5 on the communications, my advice to you would be to input all the costs against the management work package and just set aside the communications, okay? Just to make life easier for yourselves and for us going forward. The start date of your project is quite important because it drives the periods for your project. Each period on the project will be for a period of 3 months, unless you select a start date which is not the first of the month. Say you pick today's date, the 10th of June. Your first period would run from the 10th of June to the 31st of August, and then it would reset to normal every 3 months, 1st of September to 31st of October, and so on. It's at your liberty to pick your implementation or your project start date. We're not going to guide you in any way. Previous calls, Paul and I tried to get people to sort of start 1st of February, 1st of May, 1st of August. This will be the last new project, so it's not going to make a lot of difference. So we'll allow you the discretion to select our project start date. And what I would say is that if you're incurring any expenditure, say whilst you're developing your project, those are potentially eligible costs. So please select a start date that covers the dates that your expenditure is incurred. Okay? So, for example, if you've got costs that leave your bank account in August this year, don't make the start date of your project September, or otherwise those costs will not be eligible. Okay? So, on EMS, and as a lot of you will be aware, there are 6 budget headings. These are laid out in the relevant regulations. As Paul mentioned earlier, capital, the last budget heading there, capital investment costs, it's unlikely on a €1 million project that budget heading will be used, because that's mainly to do with capital builds or refurbishments. So it's highly unlikely that will be used. So we'll be focusing on the other 5 budget headings, okay? A couple of points to note there. Statutory redundancy costs are eligible for reimbursement. So if you have a 2-year project and your project staff are effectively made redundant at the end of the project, then you can include statutory redundancy costs within the application, but please book them against staff costs and not against external expertise or any other budget heading. And by the same token, recruitment costs, we've seen in the past recruitment costs being included against staff costs. Please include any recruitment costs against external expertise. There will be a subheading for you to input that against on EMS. So earlier I didn't make this clear enough, but there'll be what's known as a mandatory attachment on the EMS system, where it's effectively an Excel template where you will populate details of your staff. There's a big list of requirements that are there. They're all covered within that template. I've got no desire to read them all out, but suffice to say that all the information within that template is required. Okay. Office and administration costs. There's a tick box on the system, so please tick that box, and the system will automatically populate your budget with office and admin costs or overheads. Another way of putting it is 15% of your staff costs. So the system will automatically calculate that. Please tick that box, otherwise you'll be causing yourself a lot of work, because then you'll have to manually input it. So please take the time just to make sure that tick box is checked. There's another document, it's in Word, it's a mandatory attachment, and it covers the other budget headings. So what we need to see in there is the rationale or assumptions or evidence to support all your other costs. Now that's for the budget headings under travel and accommodation, external expertise and services, and equipment costs. So please take the time to populate that, but don't panic. If we find that the evidence or assumptions don't tally up or aren't robust enough, we'll be in contact during the clarification phase, and we'll seek that additional detail from you. Okay. There's another screen within EMS regarding budgets and finance, and that's the defined contribution screen. It effectively tells us how the project's going to be funded at each partner level, and for each partner, for this call, we would anticipate that 85% of the costs are provided by ERDF, and the other 15% is provided by central government accountable match funding. Now, the central government match funding, there's a separate box in there that you put in there, and it's under the other funding sources. So effectively, 100% of the project cost will be grant funded. Okay. The other bits about match funding and other funding, cash or in kind, is irrelevant unless you wish to provide your own funding. That's not required for this project. Catch you later for a few questions. Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to outline the timeline and some additional bits of information. So we're obviously having the workshop today. There's going to be 3 expert workshops. So Tony Dignan, who's with us at the front of the room today, will be running those workshops, and SUPB will be in attendance. So you will have the opportunity to hopefully have digested some of the information, and we could get into the nitty-gritty of the questioning and give you a bit more detail as to what we want to see around some of the issues. So don't be too concerned around the content today, because there's a permanent record, but two will be explaining it further. So you will have the opportunity to gather all the information you need in advance of submission by the 24th of May at 5 o'clock. And you could be in contact with us during that time. There's no issue there at all. So once SUPB receive it, we send the project details off to the accountable departments. We'll probably come back within 3 to 4 weeks with points of clarity. You'll be then given some time to come back to those. We will then arrange a steering committee, indicatively the 25th of October, and then 1 to 2 weeks after that you'll be issued with a letter of offer if you're successful. So there will be further technical workshops which will cover details on the requirements of the programme, the process, evidence of need and demand, and evidence of contribution towards the peace programme. So those will be coming down the line. We don't have dates for those yet. We're just firming those up, but you are on our mailing list and will receive those details in due course. I'm going to hand over to my colleagues in the policy departments now because they'll be able to give you a bit more of a brief. But maybe before I do, is Slido working? Have we got? Because I know that there was issues around polling. No. No. We'll just continue on with the slides then. Okay. Sorry, Lindsay.
That's okay. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Lindsay Farrell. I'm from the Executive Office, and the Executive Office is accountable department for building positive relations at a regional level. So that's why we're here, and specifically to talk about the Urban Villages programme. That is part of the targeting of this particular call. Apologies to those of you who've had to listen to me already this morning, so I will try to mix it up a little bit, so it's not exactly what you heard before. But please bear with me, and I have only 2 or 3 slides to cover. So in terms of the policy context for this work, the actual policy responsibility for social economy, social enterprise and the development of that sector sits with the Department for the Economy. And we're here, as I've mentioned, the Executive Office as accountable department for the theme under Peace 4 funding, and specifically around the Urban Villages initiative. But all of us across the Northern Ireland Government departments are obviously working within the context of the draft programme for government. And there's a number of links to those draft outcomes that are really relevant here in terms of building a place where we prosper through a strong, competitive, regionally balanced economy, and creating a place where people want to live and work, to visit and invest. And then obviously from a good relations point of view, see, I told you there'd be music and entertainment in mind. We have a shared society that respects diversity. And I think, as Paul or Mark mentioned at the outset, this is essentially a good relations call. That's at its heart. And social economy and social enterprise is purely the means or the mechanism for doing that. And as the department with responsibility for the TBUC strategy and driving forward that good relations agenda, we're always looking for opportunities to build good relations in new ways, to find new opportunities to bring communities together and to create connections and relationships that otherwise may not have existed. And so this is an innovative new way of trying to approach that. It is on a pilot basis, as Paul and Mark have mentioned, but it brings with it many exciting opportunities, I think, for how we can develop good relations in an area that previously may have been approached in an isolated way from good relations. So it's bringing two very important agendas together in a way that we think can have a real impact on communities. But the Department for Economy has the lead responsibility for the development of social economy policy as a whole for Northern Ireland. They chair a social economy policy group that is a range of relevant, interested departments that sit around that table. That's a key group in terms of identifying what departments are doing around social economy and overseeing the social economy action plan that sits alongside that, and that sets out a number of themes and a number of priorities for taking that work forward. And I think what that group clearly shows is, even though the responsibility sits with the Department for the Economy, there's other departments that have a role to play and can contribute to this important agenda here. The three themes that you see laid out there at the side are obviously consistent with this call and what we're talking about today in terms of increasing awareness and raising the profile of the social economy. And I know that's something that we're seeing coming forward through the Urban Villages programme that we're involved in. There's an increasing appetite, an increasing desire within communities to get involved in this. Even those who may not totally understand it are keen to know more, to learn more and understand how they can benefit from it and how their community can benefit from it, and particularly in these times when we're forcing them and coercing them to talk about sustainability and to prepare for funding coming to an end and all of these things. So I think communities are well up for this. Theme 2 is about developing the sector and increasing its business strength. And theme 3, creating a supportive and enabling environment, which are obviously all about creating the conditions where social economy and enterprise can thrive, and this particularly at a community level in the way that's been suggested for the call through the Urban Villages initiative. Which takes me on to the Urban Villages programme. It is a good relations programme. It's one of the 7 headline actions within the Executive's Good Relations strategy, Together Building a United Community. It's often viewed wrongly as a regeneration programme. Regeneration is part of it, but regeneration is purely a mechanism for building good relations. And that's reflected in the 3 pillars of the programme that you will see on the slide there. So to foster positive community identities, to build community capacity, and to improve the physical environment. So the programme in and of itself, these 3 elements aren't new, but it does represent a new approach in terms of integrating those 3 pillars. So it's recognising that within a community there will be physical needs in terms of the physical environment. There will be capacity needs in terms of the social capital within those communities, the individuals, the groups, the organisations that make up that community, and there also will be the need for better relations both within and across each urban village and across urban villages as a whole. So this is an attempt to bring those 3 pillars together into a more integrated, holistic approach. And I think what this call that we're talking about today around social enterprise, it actually highlights the vast opportunities there are to enhance these 3 pillars within urban villages. Because as I talk in a little bit more detail around the programme, you will see where there's already connections, albeit some of them are peripheral to social enterprise through some of the existing work in urban villages. So I think there's a real opportunity to tap into what's there already and to enhance that and build on it. And that's something that we'll be really, really keen to see. So in terms of the urban villages themselves, as you've heard already, there are 5 of them. These were identified by ministers at the outside of the programme. They were identified for all very similar reasons, in that they were areas who suffered multiple deprivation, complex transgenerational challenges, impact of the conflict and the legacy of that, and ongoing issues potentially around community tensions, around the impact of paramilitarism, those sorts of key challenges that many of our communities face on a daily basis. 4 of the urban villages are in the Belfast area. The 4 zones within Belfast. So the North Urban Village takes in Ardoyne, Greater Ballysillan. South is Sandy Row, Markets and Donegal Pass. east side is the lower part of the Newtownards Road, and the urban village in West Belfast takes in the entire Colin area of West Belfast. Then the urban village up in the northwest is Bogside, Fountain and Bishop Street. So albeit they were identified for very similar reasons, I think what's become very clear as we've been involved in rolling out the programme is that there are also huge differences across those areas as well, not only in terms of their demographics and their geographies and their populations, but also in terms of the priorities that they have for their community and where they see the real levers for change and where they really would place their resources. So at the outset of the programme, there was quite an intensive period of consultation in each of those urban village areas. That resulted in the production of what was called a strategic framework for the area. So there will be one of those available for each of the 5 urban villages, and they're all available online. When you look at them, you will see that they're a relatively high-level document that sets out the key challenges, the key issues and the key priorities for each urban village, and then a number of strategic actions that communities felt would move them towards addressing the issues as they had led them out in that strategic framework. Since we've been working in each of the 5 areas, that has essentially become our roadmap for each of the urban villages. So everything that's taken forward under the programme fits under that strategic framework, so that community can clearly see they identified a need, they identified a priority, and where the range of projects that are being taken forward then contribute to meeting those needs and addressing those issues. You will see when you look at them that the area of social enterprise has emerged in a number of areas. But as I mentioned earlier, you will see that different areas give different priorities to different issues. But what I would say is what has become very clear through our work in urban villages is that some areas are much further ahead in terms of their knowledge and awareness and participation in social enterprise. Others, albeit they may be further behind, there is still that willingness to learn and to get involved. And I think that has increased as we have increased our presence around the capital projects. So what we're starting to see is through various strands of delivery across our programme, there's more reference being made to social enterprise, albeit at different stages and groups with very differing levels of capacity around it. But I think we see it as a real way of bringing an impetus for greater collaborative working. We see it as an opportunity to bring groups together both within an urban village, but also potentially across different urban villages as well, to share ideas, experience, practice, possibly come up with innovative new ideas and solutions to some of the issues that they all face. Because as we have started to bring the villagers together, people are now realising that many of the challenges they face are common ones, and that there is learning in other communities that they should tap into. And we've seen that, for example, through some work that we've done in the East Side Urban Village, where they have identified community tourism as a big priority for them in that area. They've really put a focus on it. Urban Villages has sought to bring a strategic focus to that and bringing separate strands of projects together. And you could see, for example, how that project could really be enhanced with more of a focus around social enterprise and bringing it to the next level. So there will be a number of projects like that already happening in communities. They may or may not already have a focus on social enterprise, but we see it as a real opportunity for this call to identify those and to be able to enhance and develop what's there already. So that just brings me to my last slide. And it's really just to affirm some takeaway messages that I've probably mentioned most of them already. Urban Villages is a good relations programme. So what we will want to see from an Urban Villages point of view is how responses to this call will build the good relations and reconciliation outcomes using social enterprise as the means and the mechanism for doing that. We use the vision that's laid out in Together Building a United Community for the type of areas that we want to create, and we apply this to the 5 urban village areas. And I suppose the key part with relevance to this call is to create communities where everyone can live, learn, work and socialise together, free from prejudice, hate and intolerance. And we certainly feel that this call and the whole area of social economy and social enterprise can play an important part in terms of raising the aspirations of these communities. We're constantly hearing of a poverty of hope and a poverty of aspiration, a reliance on funding, and the need for capacity to be built. And we think this call can really bring a lot to what we're trying to do through urban villages. We deliver through 3 different strands within the programme, and you will see them encapsulated in those 3 circles there. So there's a range of community-led projects. They're already happening and rolling out in the 5 urban village areas, and they are just that. They're led by community. They're led by organisations embedded within the urban village area, and they can range from health initiatives to community events to training, and again, linked very much to the strategic framework for that particular urban village. But there will be a number of those, certainly in some urban village areas, that have a focus already on social enterprise. They may be very small in scale, but I think they're testimony of the priority and the importance that some communities are placing on this, and that they do want to go on a journey with this. So again, that may be a useful starting point if you're thinking about developing a response to this and getting involved in this. I think that would be a very useful starting point to look at what's already happening through community-led projects. We're also taking through a whole range of capital projects through our pipeline. And again, there will be a number of those in each urban village area. Some of those will include the potential for some sort of social enterprise initiative. In fact, that's something we're wanting to encourage. So again, I see that as a real opportunity for a call like this to actually come in and enhance that and build on it and help move it along and support it. The third strand of activity that we support through the programme is what we call cross-cutting support. And that's where we seek to address issues that have come up across a number of urban village areas. So, for example, support for schools with good relations. So we're working with the Education Authority around the School of Sanctuary initiative. So that applies across all 5 urban village areas. But part of that is also about sharing practice across the 5 urban village areas and, importantly, building capacity. So we do have a focus within the programme at the minute around building capacity to support organisations within the urban village. We've commissioned a skills audit and asked them where they thought they had gaps in their knowledge and experience and where they could benefit from some capacity building support. Social enterprise was one of the areas that did emerge through that as being something that they could benefit from training and development around. So again, that might be useful material to draw upon. And through the cross-cutting strand, we've already been partnering with Ulster University, for example, around providing a certain number of placements for people from urban villages to do diploma in social enterprise, to get involved in training around that. But again, that's a useful starting point. But I think a great opportunity to build on all of that and take the knowledge that's already there in communities and actually apply it in a very practical way. And I know I'm very excited to see some of the ideas that might come forward through this. But what I would say, the essence of urban villages is that it's community informed. And that is actually a really critically important piece for us within the Executive Office. We've worked extremely hard to get to the place where I think genuinely it's viewed in that way. You always have to work hard for community organisations to genuinely feel that they're embedded and part of a process. So there are existing structures within urban villages. There are reference groups. There's a reference group in each urban village area. We use that as our sense check for that urban village area. So nothing will happen through the Urban Villages programme without us taking it to that reference group, having a discussion and seeking the views of people within the community. We're always really keen that we aren't parachuting initiatives in, that will go in, not build relationships and then leave again, because we do see that as a way of undermining the fidelity of the programme and what we're trying to achieve. So what will be really important to us is seeing ideas on how people who want to get involved in this process will engage with that local infrastructure, how they will both engage and make contact, but importantly build relationships and not forget about what's there. Because an important theme for us is actually building on what's already there as opposed to reinventing the wheel. So it's back to the points I made earlier about identifying projects that are already within each urban village that either have a social enterprise focus or there's a real potential for them to have, and drawing alongside those and making them feel part of this process as opposed to setting up a new structure and a whole new infrastructure around it. That's a really important piece for urban villages and something that we would really want to see coming forward in any response. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Rosie Smith and I work in the Department of Rural and Community Development in Ireland, and we are the designated accountable department for 3 of the 4 themes under the Peace 4 programme, one of which is building positive relations. In recent years, there's been a consistent message on the need for a national social enterprise policy in Ireland. As up to now, there has been no single accepted definition of a social enterprise, and as a result has created a difficult in measuring the impact of social enterprises. These reports also outline the need to measure the added value of social enterprises. The Department of Rural and Community Development is in its final stages of developing a national policy on social enterprise. A draft will be published over the coming days for public consultation, and the Department is committed to implementing and overseeing the implementation of this policy. There are a number of key strategy documents which I want to refer you to, which include the Programme for Government, Realising our Rural Potential and Action Plan for Jobs. Under Programme for Government, we have committed to contributing to peace-building initiatives across the globe and to work with the Northern Ireland Executive to agree and implement cross-border projects that can benefit from EU funding through Interreg and peace programmes. The Programme for Government recognises the important role of social enterprises in the country and promotes a supportive environment for enterprise and employment, and encourages the creation and development of the social economy to build supportive ecosystems for social enterprises. Project Ireland 2040 is the Government of Ireland's long-term overarching strategy, which recognises that economic and social progress go hand in hand. Project Ireland 2040 has 10 priorities, including strengthening rural economies and communities, a strong economy supported by enterprise, innovation and skills, and access to quality services. Realising our rural potential, the Action Plan for Rural Development. This acknowledges that there is no one-size-fits-all approach for rural Ireland. It is a diverse and varied place where innovation and local enterprises must be supported and encouraged. It is about supporting, empowering and building sustainable communities and growing jobs and enterprise. It also highlights the need for the establishment of the local enterprise office network. The Action Plan for Jobs acknowledges the importance and availability of the right skills as a key enabler for enterprises' performance and growth, and is committed to supporting the long-term growth of enterprises. It seeks to remove barriers to participation in employment and focus around resilience in the face of significant challenges. It is a collective approach to economic renewal and job creation and requires harnessing community, stakeholder and volunteer involvement to identify and address any potential barriers which exist. The Action Plan for Job also highlights the need for policy development for the social enterprise sector. There are also 8 regional action plans for jobs that have been developed to run alongside the National Action Plan for Jobs, one of which is the North East Northwest Regional Action Plan for Jobs, and it plays a key role in improving the operating environment for businesses so that enterprises can start up, grow and create employment. The local enterprise development plans were prepared by the local enterprise offices and the local authority. They identified the key areas for enterprise opportunity in the region, and so that might be worth giving some thought to for this call. The local enterprise office has an important role in the direction and delivery of economic development and are a core instrument for local enterprise support and development in the relevant counties. The local economic and community plan is a separate plan, and it aims to identify and implement actions to strengthen and develop the economic and community dimensions of the county through a number of themes, including economic development and job creation, sustainable and inclusive communities, and collaboration and partnership working. They also highlight the lack of training in the social enterprises and the need for growth, promotion and development of enterprises. The Forrester Report on Social Enterprise in Ireland, Sectoral Opportunities and Policy Issues provides an international review on policy enterprises and highlights the need for a coherent policy on social enterprise in Ireland, capacity building in the sector, and understanding the broad range of governance arrangements. The Irish Local Development Network completed a significant piece of research on social enterprises with a common consensual goal of creating and enabling supportive environment for the social enterprise sector in Ireland. The report promotes a more realistic and comprehensive understanding of the motivations, characteristics and benefits of social enterprise activity. It states that monitoring, measuring and tracking of enterprise activities must be integrated into the social enterprise strategy development process and procedures and is not just an add-on at the end. It outlines the valuable role of the local development companies play in supporting social enterprises in their communities. Competency development initiatives and training can be managed, delivered and coordinated through these local development companies. And they have extensive knowledge of their regions in terms of deprivation and social need, and so you may wish to consider engagement with them as part of this call as well. It highlights the need to educate social entrepreneurs on the implications of partnership arrangements and to evaluate and test partnership options as a means of compensation for the deficiencies of the social enterprise in skills, resources, access to market opportunities, or as a source of innovation. It concludes that planned networking, partnerships and collaborations work effectively for micro, small and medium enterprises. Similar principles can be applied to the social enterprises as a means of overcoming scarce resources. And finally, the Department would like to see applications demonstrating a strong strategic vision consistent with the local economic and community plans and or the urban villages initiatives. Cross-border collaboration, improved outcomes for communities in the area, additionality and value for money, sustainable impact on social and economic development through measurable outputs, and the self-sustainability. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much to Rosie and Lindsay for the policies perspective from Northern Ireland and Ireland. Perhaps we'll take some questions now. I know the poll is suggesting that we have a number of people here, 56% who have voted out of the 9 that are interested in being partners, and the remainder being lead partners. There'll be an opportunity after the question answer for you to maybe come together and introduce yourselves and maybe start to form partnerships. I'll just look at the Slido questions now. The first question up there, can a corporate or private consultancy organisation apply as lead partner? Yes, they can. There's nothing to prohibit it, providing they have legal identity. Section 3.4 of our rules sets out what we would expect to see there, and that includes private companies. It tends to be SMEs. We don't tend to have anything larger than that. You could have universities, local authorities, charities, in there. You'd obviously have to have legal identity, some financial capacity, and we'll check your financial capacity as part of the application process. So in terms of the status of the lead partner and the legal form, Section 3.4 of our programme rules sets out some examples. There's nothing, providing you have legal identity in terms of the law, there's not much that will preclude you from making an application. Whether or not your legal identity would then be subject to state aid is another issue. As a private company, we would have to assess that on a case-by-case basis. Is there a limit to the number of staff roles? The limitation is the funding. We have 1 million available, and you need to provide justification for the roles. You can have freelance and personnel considered under staff. That we would expect to see freelance if it's an ad hoc, probably coming under expertise and services. Maybe you could clarify.
If you're bringing in project positions, then we would expect to see them in staff primarily, but you can bring in freelance personnel. There'd have to be a justification why you would want to use freelance workers in lieu of contracted staff personnel. Yeah. In terms of if you're bringing them in to provide external expertise, freelance staff, they would be considered to be external expertise and services. Does that answer the question?
I think Section 7 of the programme rules sets out what is eligible under staff costs, and you could find more detail in there. And we could cover this again at the further workshops.
You don't have to have a formal contract of employment, i.e. be a full-time member of staff or a part-time member of staff to be considered to be staff costs under the programme, but you'd have to justify why you would go down the route of using freelance members of staff in lieu.
I can confirm that the 15% contribution match will be made by the member states. Yes, so it's 100% funding that you could apply for, or you could bring some of your own if you wish to do so. The representation from existing urban villages, I suppose this is maybe about the existing activity. I'll maybe defer to my colleagues on whether or not it would be appropriate to invite anyone along to talk about the activity, or maybe my colleagues could maybe highlight some of the activities. Probably, yeah, at future workshops we could maybe have our colleagues go into a bit more depth about the activity that's happening there, so our colleagues from the Executive Office, that is. Okay, is there any questions from the floor? Yeah. Do we have a microphone? No? Do you want to just stand up?
So, there's quite a lot of work to do in 6 weeks with Easter holidays. I just kind of had quickly jotted down what my plan would be. Familiarise myself with the process, familiarise myself with the policy context of 2 jurisdictions, seek out partners about how we might work together, including connecting them with community if you haven't already done that, develop a theory of change, design programme of partners, cost a programme, develop management, implementation, communications work packages, upload to the system, which takes a wee while, and some monitoring and evaluation plans by the 25th of May, with some workshops that we don't have dates for yet. So is there, and I know that question was asked this morning about the deadline too.
Yeah, we will certainly look at the deadline. I suppose this project might have a little bit more runway in that the programme ends in 2023 and this is only a 2-year programme, so
Right.
we might have a bit more scope to extend that.
Okay.
But I certainly accept your feedback, and we'll look
And
at the
when do you
timing.
think you might have a sense of when?
Next week.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back, and if we're going to change the timeline, we'll inform you next week.
Okay. And do you have a sense of how many applications you expect to receive?
No, we don't. We're only looking for one application.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a sense of how many we're expected to see. We have, I think there were 600 on our mailing list. I think there's just over 50, maybe 60 folk here just now. I don't know how many are online. So that gives you a sense in terms of that would be the evidence that we would be taking from. But maybe the timing thing is potentially put people off. So we will need to look at that.
And just when you're thinking about pulling your application together, is there a paper application that you can use as a guide, or is it your presentation, or do you have to get onto the system to really?
You need to get onto the system, but you can PDF your application once you're on the system.
Right.
So it prints out all the sections, and there's a guide on how to do that online.
And it was about 2 years ago when I was last on it. So are you limited to what pages you can see? Do you have to complete certain bits before you can? Are they dependent?
There's been an update to the system,
right?
As I understand,
and you can see everything. Okay.
You see the sections as you print it. You can see all the sections. So the sections 1 to 11, which I outlined.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Pardon my bewilderment. Thank you for this afternoon. Do you have a definition of what a social enterprise is? Are there thresholds of activity? Is there a certain size and shape that it has to conform to? Does it have to be registered in any way?
No. We will take our cue from what you consider is the standard within the area in which you're working in. We're not the experts in social enterprise. We're asking you, as the experts in social enterprise and peace building, to present this to us with a rationale. So we will certainly ask the questions about why. Why have you chosen a social enterprise of that size, or why do you want to engage at this level? But certainly we don't have any expectations that we're going to create absolute micro-only social enterprises or sort of large social enterprises. We have no expectation. Again, this is about capacity building.
Okay, so it can be pre-existing?
It can be pre-existing, but the issue is again around the peace and reconciliation aspect. Yeah.
And notionally, one application, as you stressed, and one project for €1 million.
Yes.
Given the context, the rather volatile potential for the exchange between £1 and €1, heaven forfend, how can you build in some flexibility in budgeting in order to mitigate what could be some quite potentially maybe even 15 or 20% changes over the period of this application, this process?
Yeah. Well, we've proposed the planning rate of 1.18. The current exchange rate is slightly below that. I think if I knew what it was going to be, I wouldn't be here doing this. So I think we need to just accept the risk as is at the moment, but put maybe points in your project where it could be revisited in terms of what you're actually incurring at.
And do you anticipate us doing that as our critical pathway, or will you be doing that?
I think there's about both, to be honest, because we as a project in our entirety have to manage the programme. As you can imagine, and we've got the 500 million across both programmes, and I would say probably 2/3 to 3/4 of that is, activity being incurred in sterling. So, and most of that's at a planning rate of 1.18. So we manage it at a 500 million level. We would expect you to manage and mitigate it at a 1 million level.
Okay, I'll do my best.
So the 1.18 isn't just for budgeting purposes then?
We're
actually going to consume it at that rate?
No, you'll consume it at the rate in which you spend in practice.
Right. Okay.
You may wish to, there's things out there you could lock in a rate, you could hedge, all these different things, but it's, the fluctuation, I think, currently you're on the favourable side, so if you start incurring and then it goes above, you might end up somewhere in between. So we anticipate an average of 1.18, but nobody knows what the exchange rate is going to be.
So just consumed at the prevalent rate?
Exactly,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Alistair will tell you what the rate is on each period.
what happens in practice is your budget will be calculated using, or you'll submit your budget in euro. And that's only a planning rate to get you to upload your budget in euro, okay? What happens in practice, when you started, if you're lucky enough to be given the grant, what will happen is every time you incur expenditure in sterling, you'll upload it to the system in sterling, and then the system converts the transactions in sterling into euro at the EU exchange rate for the month in which you submit the claim. So they have a fixed rate of exchange which lasts for a calendar month, and it's widely available. You can track it. It's on a website, and it tells you what the exchange rate is for that particular month. And when you submit the claim at that rate, we then pay you back at the same rate. Okay, that's the way it works in practice.
Okay, I know that there's more comments on the Slido around the time frame, and as I said, we'll take that away and look at that and come back to you. Any further questions yet?
Paul, you've specified outcomes that you want to see, obviously, within the programme, but you haven't specified targets per se. I'm just thinking back to maybe a couple of years ago with children and young people, where you were quite specific on numbers of people touched by the programme. Is there an expectation within the programme in terms of the numbers of people that you would want to see influenced or affected? Or
no, we don't have participant numbers. What we do have is community splits. You know, if you are engaging, we need to ensure that you're engaging on a cross-community and or cross-border basis. Okay. Zach, yeah, please. The formality of the partnerships will be borne out in a partnership agreement. So every project will, if they're successful, will have to present a partnership agreement. So we would expect this. Well, we would anticipate that we would see a draft at the application stage. It might not be the final, but we would anticipate that there would be a draft. We've not included it as a mandatory attachment, but it would be good practice to include a draft, that it would certainly help your case. So one-stage application, it's not a two-stage application process. 22 weeks from start to finish that we have from submission to decision. That might fluctuate depending on whether or not we put the deadline back. It's very difficult to determine. If we go on the previous Building Positive Relations call, we were oversubscribed. We were looking for 20 projects. We got, I think, 36. However, recent calls, we had one for electric vehicles on the Interreg side. We were looking for one application and we only got one application. So, that gives you a sense that it's very difficult to predict who will apply and what will be made available. But I think the limiting factor is that we're looking for one consortium to deliver it all. So, we would anticipate that we will have fewer bids, but I can't quantify that. I'm not going to be drawn on that. I don't think we could guess how many applications we're going to get, but I think there will be low numbers. Okay. Well, we have some time this afternoon if people want to hang around and do a bit of networking. What we would also be proposing is that we maybe share your details if everyone's content with that and subject to GDPR, so that you have an idea of the organisations who are interested. And then we're potentially thinking about putting out a little pen picture of each organisation, providing they're interested in participating, whether they want to be lead partner, project partner, what size, scale, where they see their added value, that sort of stuff. So we'll try and get something out to you in the coming days or next week, and then we'll look at the time frame. Well, thank you very much for today, and keep in touch with us. Pick up the phone at any point during the process, and I hope you enjoy the rest of that lovely afternoon out there. Thank you.